So, William, did you have a Merry Christmas?
I did. Did you?
Yeah, Christmas is good this year.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Not feel like a fish out of water, not being in the mountains though.
No, no. But it was a good one. It's nice to be home this year, so it's warm.
Yeah, it is warm. Definitely miss the cold. So, construction defects. Well, no, home inspection defects.
Yeah.
They are construction defects, but we'll call them home inspection defects.
Yep, definitely. So today I got a lot of photos for you.
Okay.
A little bit about water heaters that weren't correctly installed. Same thing with some HVAC systems.
Okay.
I'm going to look at some attic framing today for you.
Okay.
And then I believe we're going to be also looking at some plumbing clearances as well.
Some clearance issues with plumbing.
Yep.
Oh, so we're moving all over the place today.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we got photos.
Yeah, we got photos. I know we took a break last week, but these are all inspections I've performed in the last 2 weeks.
Okay. Perfect.
All right.
Well, let's jump in. What do we got here, William?
So we're looking at 2 water heaters. Well, it was actually 4. It was a fourplex. Each unit had their own water heater, which is uncommon to see. And they also had 4 heating units in that complex in the basement. And essentially, they were tying the exhaust vents for 2 of each unit together and going through the roof from the basement.
Okay.
All right.
Well, look at that. So there's the vent for 2 of the water heaters. Is that the one you called me on the phone about? Or you texted me about?
I believe so, yeah.
In real time? That's what you were talking about. Wow. That's wrong every which way to Sunday.
Yeah. And mind you, all these units were only 5 years old.
Ooh.
So it goes to show you that
So this was
people still are doing things incorrectly.
So what would you call this, a slumlord? What did you
Pretty
call out
much.
Guido to come out and install the water heaters? I mean, they picked him up,
It
Picked
was
them
that
up off
vibe
a-
for sure.
bought him off the back of a truck and pulled in here and say, "Hey, Johnny, go to Home Depot and get some vents and some stuff and let's install these things."
Pretty much.
I mean, look at that. I mean, let's just connect the vents and shoot it to a T and move it on out. So
Yep.
this is a big issue here because you can get, well, obviously we're going to have incorrect drafting. So these vents are for products of combustion, or basically what's resulting after you burn the flame, which is toxic, right? And you don't want that backing up into the crawl space, which is in the underfloor areas of all the units. So it's unsafe,
Yeah.
and it's irresponsible to even let somebody install this. It's obviously not permitted. What else do you see here?
Well, I noticed there's a downward slope for starters on that right side vent,
Right.
where it comes into the T. And then typically, whenever we see exhaust vents combined together, we want to see it double in size after the connection.
It's a rule of thumb, doubling in size. I mean,
There are certain sizing requirements based
Right.
on the BTUs present. But I mean, as home inspectors, we're not doing those calculations. And I mean, this is just a dead giveaway. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't increase in size at all. So
yeah. So, and then behind it there, well,
it's just touching the ducting and
the ducting's right up against that, isn't it?
yeah, it was up against all those vents.
Okay.
But I mean, we can move on. Here's another.
Oh, so that's
same
the-
crawl space. Those are the other.
Those
one
are the
here.
other 2? Wow. Wow. Okay. And you can see, wow. Okay. That's just wrong.
Yeah. And now let's bang up on the. These are actually I think to the left that's for the water heater, and to the right that's actually one of the connections for
The furnaces.
the furnaces.
Yeah,
But you
okay.
can see all 4 here.
So I'm looking at this, and great photo, William. I mean, there's all kinds of things to talk about here. First of all, in our last episode, we talked about was it the last episode? Black copper piping.
Yeah.
Looks like this copper piping is turning black as well. So probably have a whole host of reasons why that's happening. That just kind of is an indicator, danger,
You
Will
can see
Robinson,
right there
danger.
At the very left-hand side over by the valve, it's actually being strapped with galvanized.
Okay.
And you can see all that corrosion right there as well.
So that's corrode. Okay.
And
So
it's touching the exhaust vents too and stuff
Okay.
like that. So
Well, you got a lot of insulation there on the exhaust vents to keep it away from other stuff. Isn't that's a pretty smart thing to do?
Yeah, and I mean, for the untrained eye, that doesn't look like insulation. That just looks like cardboard.
Right. It's not.
But what looks like cardboard? Where does our mind go? We think it's asbestos, right?
Well, especially when it's has a white look to it, right?
And it's white cardboard, and in this case, it's all deteriorated and damaged. It could be getting into the air.
Right.
I did, and I mean, I did this inspection. I can tell you they had asbestos ducting in there as well.
Okay.
Where the fiberglass ducts connected to the registers at the boots. But
well, they put a lot of piping in and through there to try to make stuff fit and work, and that's just, I mean, that stuff all needs to be cleaned up. It's a big accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And to the untrained eye, some people would be really confused. Like, why is my exhaust vent corroded? Why is there watermarks?
Right.
I know the roof is sealed.
Right.
Where's the water coming from?
Yeah. Well, tell us, where's the water coming from?
Well, I'll go to the next.
Let's skip to the next slide, and then we'll come back to this, right?
So actually, this one.
Okay.
So we had updated fan-induced furnaces.
Predominantly where most all that moisture was coming from. Go back to that other one for the vent. So we're really talking about that middle vent. Those are the middle one and the one all the way to the right there, right? Where all that corrosion is.
So those are both the vents for the
furnaces. For the furnaces.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that's a giveaway.
Okay.
And
so
then
let's go to the furnace. And behold, moisture, rust, corrosion in the furnace. Okay.
So these are updated.
Those are updated furnaces.
5 years old. And they're in pretty bad shape already. I know as soon as the heat exchanger starts to rust out, it starts to become a little dangerous. As time goes on and the worse it gets if it doesn't go unchecked. But essentially, you can't use transite vent pipe with an updated fan-induced furnace because the fan will cause condensation in the pipe and it'll just come back down into the unit because of how good of an insulator this transite is, or asbestos pipe. Am I nailing that on the head correctly?
Yeah, I think you got it pretty well dialed. So modern day furnaces have this fan, that black fan at the top of your photo there. That is called an inducer fan. And what it does is it actually pushes the exhaust up out through the vent pipe through the roof. It's kind of a helper, right? And the reason it does that is because this is a mid-efficiency furnace, and meaning that it's using up so much of the heat through the heat exchanger that the products of combustions aren't superheated. So if they're superheated or heated really hot, heat rises and it will go up through the roof. In this particular case, it's not super hot, so that fan has to help it push it out, right?
Yeah.
This is probably a 2-story apartment.
Yeah, 2-story
so,
apartment building.
So there you go, right? And so those vents are not only going up to just one floor, that fan's got to help push up through 2 stories now. And the old furnace that originally was there had the transite asbestos vent pipe. Well, asbestos is such an excellent insulator, just like what you said. It also pulls heat out of the air or the gases air is considered a gas that's in the pipe. In this case, it's a product of combustion, but it's still, air, and it's going to cool. It's going to cool those gases. Well, what happens when you cool gases? I think we've all seen it. When you have a glass and it's cool glass, condensate builds up, right? The moisture comes around and builds up on the side. So once it starts doing that cooling effect, the moisture is all that's left, and that's why you're seeing these corrosion, staining, and all the water damage at the bottom of the pipe and starting to drip down into the actual furnace. I'm with much longer, more detailed explanation, but you hit the nail on the head with it.
Yeah. I'd be pretty upset if this was my install.
Well, I mean, I don't know that this gentleman can be that upset. He probably didn't want to pay
Yeah.
for a professional installation, much less he knows the landlord here knows he didn't get permits, cut the corner, spent the bottom dollar to get this installed. And now all the stuff he spent big dollars on is only going to last probably a third of the time it really normally should last, right?
Yep.
And then, it's all the tenant's fault. Yeah. No, probably not. But I mean, that's why investors should always have a property inspector come through when they're buying an investment property, because this stuff pretty much is pretty close to needing to be replaced already.
Not even just an investor, a homeowner too, because this is a hazardous condition, and I've seen it in residential homes, and I see it all the time actually.
Yep.
There was another thing you wanted to mention on the flex gas connector going through the housing.
Yep.
I know we don't like to see that here in California, especially.
I remember you were talking to me. You were okay with this one because it has that plastic grommet on the opening, right?
Yep.
But
it's loose.
But it is loose. In this particular case, I mean, I wouldn't be okay with that. I feel like it's a Band-Aid. I mean, this thing needs to be uninstalled and reinstalled and probably serviced to get as much life left is out of it as possible.
Yeah. Okay. And then I actually had another one where I wanted to show you. This was.
Oh, so there's another exhaust vent going.
It's like the next day.
That's the next day. Okay, so this exhaust vent looks like you've got two water heaters going into the same size exhaust vent again.
Yep.
But this time there was a little more prudence, I guess you would say, on the way the vent connects into it. It's not going into a T. It's a sweeping kind of a connector.
Still wrong.
still wrong. Is that vent in contact just strapped right to the stucco?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay. So it should definitely have clearance there, and there isn't any.
And then I don't know if you didn't notice this. I was going to surprise you.
Okay.
But look here at the bottom.
Ooh, that's moisture coming down there.
Yeah.
And where's that out from the vent?
Nope, that's coming from the water heater.
Oh, the water heater's leaking.
The tank was leaking, yeah.
The tank was leaking. Okay.
A little bit of Where's Waldo here for you today. All right. Okay, now I think that's it for water heaters.
All right, we're done with water heaters. Good.
HVAC.
Good job on the water heater photos today, William.
Yep. So the untrained eye wouldn't notice this again, but this is an unsafe condition. This is a older door spring for a tilt-up wooden garage door.
Okay.
Which is something we commonly see here in LA. And then there's no safety clip.
Okay, so these springs are it's a single big spring, just basically fastened to the wall.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just holding up. There's probably one on the other side, and those two springs are holding up that big wooden door.
Yep.
And if that spring snaps and you're standing there or under that door, you could get injured.
Yep.
Okay, so current code requirements, they want some kind of a safety clip on that sucker so it doesn't go flying.
Yeah.
Good catch.
And that could easily be done by a vehicle, if you're carrying something heavy or you bump into it. But
well, hey, I'm just gonna say this garage door needs to be updated.
Yeah. All right. So,
well, you just kind of slipped this one in, William.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a really pretty looking chimney.
I know we're showing this podcast all over the world. I mean, we get people from a whole bunch of other countries that watch this podcast. These chimneys were predominantly installed here in California, United States. I haven't heard of them being sold and installed out of state of California. I'm sure maybe some were because there were so many. But it was predominantly here in California. And what year are we talking about? Was it 80s? Early 80s, late 70s?
I think it was 70s.
70s. So these were installed in the maybe late 60s and into the 70s. There was a company called Rampart General that had a factory, and they decided rather than having to put them together brick by brick, let's go ahead and just build a form and pour a kind of a concrete material and cast these right in the forms in the factory. Then we'll ship them out to the residential neighborhood, to the builder in the back of a flatbed truck. And that's what the thought process was on these, which was cool because you can make a lot of them. You can do them quicker, probably cheaper. And the thought process was maybe better, right?
Yeah.
So tell me why that isn't so.
Well, this one's actually in pretty great shape.
Oh, really? Okay.
Compared to most that I've seen. But there was still some cracking. These essentially, when they were loading them onto the trucks and shipping them off, they were cracking.
Well, what they did is these trucks, they would dump them off the back.
Yeah.
I don't know if they just pushed them off and dropped them to the ground, or if the flatbeds rose up and they fell to the ground like a dump truck. But that's the story. Is that's when it hit the ground, it would crack the breastplate.
Yeah.
Or other areas of it because they're pretty large structure.
I don't know if you noticed, but like you could see a lot of degranulation and spalling right here to the left-hand side. I mean, it's a one piece giant piece of concrete.
Well, yeah, I mean it's not degranulated. It's just it's just how the concrete was poured in the form. It's just the aggregate.
Okay.
But
yeah, I mean
not even aggregate. They didn't really have an aggregate. These things were pretty fine as far as the concrete they used. So, but yeah, I mean, it actually looks in great shape, very uniform, whatnot. Show us what the big concern is with these. So this is a publication that was put out, and that's the crack at the, what do you call it?
The breastplate. They call it the insulation plate.
Or an insulation plate, right? And those are almost always cracked.
Yep.
Almost, probably, I mean, not all of them have that, but I would say probably 90% is what my experience tells me. And gases can get in between that crack and into the wall, or flames can get up in there. And it's just, they say there used to be a fix for them, but there's really no fix.
No.
This also another issue would happen with these is if the chimney's cracked on the outside or anywhere where moisture could get in, they're reinforced with rebar. So that rebar, what happens when you hit it with moisture?
Rusts and corrodes, and then it pops, and then
right. So the rebar, once it rusts and corrodes, expands.
Yep.
And as it expands, it just pushes out and essentially ruins the chimney. So
yeah. All right. And yeah, once we see this crack, can't use it anymore. So
yep. Okay, so you're in the attic now.
Uh-huh. Well, before I show you that, let's look at this one.
Okay. So that's a great overview shot of the attic. So anybody that has a home inspection done, you make sure your home inspector puts overview photos in there so you can kind of see an overview of the category that he's inspecting. It's important. If you're not doing that,
it's especially in a location and you don't want to go.
Right, because it kind of helps you see all this stuff too.
Yeah.
And so this is great. I mean, where are you standing next to the opening? You just got up there standing next to the opening?
Just standing in the middle of the attic now, and I point my flashlight down, and then, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can see, though, that's my attic.
Yeah. I like to take a picture like that. Then I like to take a picture showing the sheathing and the corners of the attic and all that stuff. So I think I did a really good job here. Showing the framing present.
Mm-hmm.
Usually that's what I like to do. Try to get everything in one shot. You could see the sheathing boards, the rafters. You even got some color tie bracing right there, and the ceiling joists, and
you can see ceiling joists, and then you got the purlin with the strong back on the left side. It's missing purlin support.
Yep.
That should be probably in this case every other rafter. Instead, we see really just one. I guess it was. Then you see that one kind of going at a diagonal or at a 45 degree there. That's probably because it needs to get to a bearing wall, and there's no bearing wall for it to get to.
Yeah.
And so something needs to be reconstructed here. Structurally, I bet they made this into somewhat an open concept underneath there. Was that the kitchen under that area?
No, this was a 2-story home. This was the hallway.
So, well,
for the
why
second
why
level.
wouldn't they just bring it right down to one of the ceiling joists there? I mean, but
They did a lot of work in there.
yeah,
It seems like they originally had a gravity wall furnace, and now they have central heating
right,
and air.
right.
There's stuff being moved around and being made to fit
Well,
in there.
you can
So
tell that this place has been remodeled just by looking at this. You got some newer uh, ceiling joists over there to the right side, and the purlins on the right side or the strong back on the right side has just been removed.
yep.
I mean, we don't see any sagging at the rafters, but structurally, the roof is not being properly supported.
No.
And I know you got me on one. So we're seeing. So what we're seeing here is any good, respectable property inspector, you need to know about roof framing and ceiling framing and all that. This one's kind of unusual because the length of the gable on the attic, you have the ceiling joists going long ways.
Hmm.
Usually they go crossways front to back and are being used also for another purpose. Why don't you talk about that, William?
Yeah. Um, so the ceiling joists are not being used for the other purpose here in that case. Usually ceiling joists, when they are parallel with the rafters, they act as rafter ties as well.
Okay.
But in this case, the ceiling joists are perpendicular to the rafters, and now we need rafter ties. Rafter ties are required, and now we know that the ceiling joists aren't acting as said rafter ties. And a lot of home inspectors probably may catch this, but they may not know what they're catching. Um, and in this photo, you could see where they have the rafter ties,
Aha!
and they cut
Evidence.
it, and they cut it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, they would catch that, and they'd be like, "This what is cut here." I'm not sure why they cut it.
Right.
But it's essentially it's bracing for the roof, to make the building a little bit more sheer, and especially since we don't have those ceiling joists acting as that as well. So
Okay. That was complicated. Good stuff, though. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
and this is a collar tie right here. So essentially a rafter tie would be that, but on the lower third section.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, this is fun. So I noticed how you squared up the photo and you made your photo, the sides of the photo, vertical,
Yep.
right?
I had to on this one.
Well, and that
I-
chimney is not vertical. So I am a fire certified level 2 chimney inspector, and I can tell you, I didn't know this until I went to school to inspect chimneys, is you can step chimneys because sometimes chimneys will come up through the ceiling, but where it comes up through the ceiling, you don't want it to keep going straight up because it might go through the ridge or through a flashing or something that's there. So you're allowed to step it to the side a certain amount to move it over so you can get up through the roof in a good location, which is what they did here. You can see it's coming up through the ceiling, and then they wanted it to go to the left a little bit because of how the roof is framed, right?
Yep.
But they didn't step it, did they? They
No.
just, I mean,
They just leaned it.
they just leaned it.
I was standing in there. I remember calling you. I was like,
If they would have stepped it, it would have been that amount to move it over would have been acceptable. Instead, it looks like the freaking leaning tower of Pizza, yeah, Pisa,
Yeah.
you know, which is not. It's unsafe. It's probably not a very good condition.
No, and it was cracked
Imagine that.
throughout the fireplace. So
Imagine that.
yeah. Okay,
All right,
this is a good one,
we're underneath the house now in the crawl space.
and I know PVC can be used for water piping, but not
Not
underneath the house.
you cannot use PVC for water supply piping in the house.
Yeah.
There has been some questioning. It's been a lot of years since I've read this part of the Uniform Plumbing Code or the International Plumbing Code. But it's my understanding that you have 6 feet. You can come into the home 6 feet with Schedule 40 PVC.
Yep.
But that's as far as you can go. So sometimes you'll see it coming into the garage, but then you got to connect to an approved type of water supply piping, like PEX or copper or galvanized or something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
But a lot of times you'll see the Schedule 40 PVC under the house being used for sprinklers, which is also water supply piping. Now, there's been a lot of arguments among certified inspectors if that's allowed or not allowed. And I would say over half the inspectors say no. And so if over half, in my opinion, and my experience, say no, if we see any water supply piping under the house, we should just call it out.
okay. This is sorry I didn't have a better photo for you here. But you're looking at a retaining wall.
Okay.
And it's a pretty new retaining wall. It was recently done, maybe a few years ago, at least I was told. And we're already seeing some signs of poor drainage or lack thereof.
Okay.
And
So we want to see weep holes or that there's some kind of a drainage tie evidence. If there was no weep holes, you'd hopefully be able to have evidence that there's a drainage tile installed behind there carrying water around or to the side of the retaining wall
Yep.
and out to an approved termination point, right?
Yep.
But no,
In this case,
you don't think so?
no, I don't think so. This wall was maybe 400 feet long.
Ooh.
So, yeah, it was long. Didn't see any weep holes, no sort of drainage, and it was like this throughout the bottom.
Was there a concrete swale at the top of it sealing any moisture that came
No.
down? No, not even that.
No swale, nothing. I looked, but in this case, pretty good. I caught this pretty early on.
Yep.
For them, because poor drainage is actually the number one killer of retaining walls.
Well, it is, and you can tell that this is drought tolerant landscaping.
Mhm.
I can tell by looking at it. Am I right?
Yeah.
There was no sprinklers.
There were,
Oh, so there were
but for
sprinklers.
the most part, it was drought tolerant. We're in the Palm Springs, and
Okay.
I didn't have too many.
I mean, you got some crocks right there, maybe some valves and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're being used for, but hopefully they're anti-siphon valves if there's sprinklers up on that slope, because you want valves that aren't anti-siphon at the top of the slope, not at the bottom.
Yep. All right.
All right, I've been waiting for this photo, William, because we got some rain here last week.
I thought we'd ended on the number one photo I took in the past 2 weeks, and
So break this down for us.
so I'm in a house, and
Is it raining?
it's raining.
It's raining while you're in the attic. You
It's
can
raining
hear the
while I'm in the attic.
raindrops hitting the roof.
Correct.
Okay.
And at least when I was outside of the home, I saw that the balconies were leaking. I saw that the eaves were leaking. I saw cracked tiles on the roof, exposed underlayment, and I decided, I was like, hey, I'm in the attic. Especially, you can see how we have OSB right here. That stuff's really hard to find water stains on,
Yeah.
even when they are present.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm gonna whip out my thermal camera.
Yeah. Good.
And
They didn't buy a thermal enhancement from you, and you just pulled it out anyway.
yeah, there was actually nobody present. This was kind of like
Okay.
here's the keys. I'll see the report later.
Yeah.
And when a lot of people don't understand, some people think that the thermal camera actually is moisture detecting,
No.
but the correct, it's a thermal camera. It's looking for hot and cold spots, and essentially we look for those hot and cold spots to tell us if there's moisture leaking or if something's overheating.
Okay.
And as you can see, the very, very center of my camera is a pretty big blue blotch right in the
Right.
middle,
Right.
and tells me that the roof is leaking here.
Okay. So you probably, when you saw that, went over there and kind of really looked closely, and it was all wet, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Thermal cameras are great. I've been trying to tell all the guys, when it's raining, you sell the thermal enhancement. And if they don't, pull that thermal camera and put it on all your ceilings, because you'll see sometimes a bunch of blue spots on the ceilings.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times those leaks don't actually come all the way through.
Yeah. I really try to sell it, especially on like a concrete slab home. Just to make sure there's no leaks in the slab as well, because we have water piping and drain lines in those.
So
slabs
infrared
sometimes.
thermal cameras can catch slab leaks.
Yep.
Who would have thought that?
And I think that's all I got for you this week. So
All right. Well, hey, William, these are some great photos this week. Definitely happy. We actually got a bunch of new subscribers this last week. Our subscriber base is growing. We really appreciate that. If you're enjoying our content, please click or hit subscribe, the notifications button, and leave comments. We really appreciate your feedback, and we'll do our best to reply to everybody that makes comments. So until next time, William.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Sam.